It's not on here.
Hi everybody, it's Roger Gaby here with Fights Clean Sex Dirty TV.
And relationshipfunandgames.com.
And we are here in episode 6 of season 2, the season of peace. And we're going to be talking about how to keep the sex dirty during.
Yes, going to kick it up a notch and keep it spicy, because really there is no reason that you have to fall into that trap of the default relationship of getting too busy or too stressed or over it. Like, you know, it's a vital part of a relationship is your physical relationship. It's one of the 3 legs of the 3 legs of the stool of the chair of the playful, peaceful, passionate relationship. So today we're going to dive in about being in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm. Now we were going to have Mahima with us today on the show.
My auntie.
And we're saddened by the fact that she's not here today. It would have been a total treat.
We're going to see about having her back in the future. Mm-hmm. But if you read any of the any of the social media postings or anything like that, I have learned more about sex from my auntie. And not just because she's my auntie, but she has 30 plus years of tantra training, led workshops, even had her own show. And she hasn't taught in like 10 years. So it was going to be a rare time to have her speak, but next time it'll be even more rare. So, but we have some great content to share with you today, some of our tips and even a couple of her ideas. So thanks for joining us.
So as you might know, if you've been following our content, we group our content in Fights Clean and Sex Dirty.
Alternating each week. One week we do Fights Clean, next week Sex Dirty.
And then we also further categorize our content looking at before, as it starts, during, and after.
Because we want you to be able to apply the tips to the area and at the particular time when it really matters to you the most.
And so each week we go back and forth between how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And we also then look at either before, during, as it starts, during, or after, depending on which week we're in. And this week we are in how to keep the sex dirty during.
Yeah. You want to go to that next slide then? Yes. And if you happen to see our blog this week, then this picture will look familiar. And we talked about one topic in the blog, and we're going to talk about that topic real in depth today, and a few of the other topics. We're going to reference a few from the last time we did this episode with the fights clean, with the sex dirty during, and really give you just a good overview of what some of those tips were as well.
So at this point in our show, generally we do a little information on our guest. This is the lovely Mary Mahima. And again, we're missing her on our show today.
And we'll have her another time then.
Yeah. So Gaby, you want to start by talking about we have a whole set of distinctions around how to keep the sex dirty during. And we're going to quickly review some of our past distinctions so that you can be reminded of those. You can also check out episodes from previous shows on our episode library page.
Yeah, the episode that correlates with this topic from last season was episode 1.6. Again, how to keep the sex dirty during, and that was with Susan Bratton and her husband Tim. And boy, was that one fun and racy. And if this is your topic, I just have to say from season 1, episode number 4. It's always funny to say it's the one episode that I wasn't on, but it's great too. Really the night after that one was the best sex we had ever had energetically. I don't know what happened with Raj, but I would go back and watch those episodes, especially you men.
It really is amazing. We love doing this work, conveying what we know, but we're always learning
so much.
As well.
Yes.
We like to apply what we're learning. We kind of use it as a litmus test of whether the tips that we're learning from our guests are good ones, and so far they have been.
Yes, yes, we knew we were going to help couples, but our relationship just keeps getting better and better, taking the advice we're learning on these calls as well. I do want to remind you that we do alternate. We will give you a chance to ask your questions live. So at about 25 minutes to the end of the show, we will remind you to refresh your screens, and then you can ask your questions. Either if you don't want to be on video, that's fine. You can ask them in the chat, in the comments. But if you want to ask them live, we're happy to talk to you and answer your specific questions.
Great. So let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Okay, so we'll do these ones a bit more briefly, but you know, the last when you do an interview and you kind of introduce some information and your interviewee says, I totally disagree. It could throw you off a bit, but it actually was it led to a really great conversation. Last season, Raj and we talked about towards versus away as one of the key tools for this area of during. And what that was about is, you know, when you're in the middle of it, you know, people can get sensitive about feedback. And so I was suggesting that you actually take whatever the complaint is, oh, I don't like that, and you turn it into a request for what you do want. You know, that you phrase things in what you are moving towards versus what you want to move away from. Now, Susan said the complete opposite, and I named it feisty feedback, but she said, oh no, I tell them right away. I make sounds and go, ew, no, ooh. Now, they've been together 26 years and they do a lot of work in this realm. So what we decided is towards versus away. If you have a sensitive partner or you're sensitive yourself, let's build that of saying what you want, not what you don't want. But if it's advanced, go ahead, give your partner that real-time feedback.
You can also play one of our good friends, Amber, who was on, I think, episode, what, 2?
Yep, she was on episode 1.2, yeah.
Studied with David Data, and one of the games that she learned with working with David Data was using numbering or sounds to make it a little bit more playful than, ooh, don't do that. It's like,
however, that's a game that you play when you're playing that game.
Yep.
If you were just in the middle of sex and you hadn't created that container and all of a sudden you go 3,
right.
That can pretty much kill the energy. So I recommend that if you are going to play that numbers game, which is a great game, just really giving that feedback moment by moment as your partner changes. Is it more attractive? Is it less attractive? You can make sounds. You can use numbers. It's a great one. Just make sure you both agree and you know you're playing the game.
You're like, 3, what? Great.
Okay, so more of that again if you look back at the last episode. But this next one came from the call, and I just love this one. And it's a little embarrassing, but now when we're having sex, I often think of some of these interviewees, specifically this one, because she taught us that you can stretch your orgasms like taffy. And in my case, I grew up on the beach, so in Santa Monica. And so I grew up riding boogie boards. And I said, oh, I know what you mean. It's like riding the wave all the way in when you're bouncing the boogie board to get it all the way in. Now, she didn't tell me technique. She didn't say anything else. But just knowing that I can stretch orgasms and Raj can stretch orgasms has pretty much doubled.
Double your pleasure.
Double your pleasure, double the length. And now when I'm in the middle of climax, I think of you, Susan. Stretch it like taffy or bounce the boogie board all the way in.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting from the male perspective to know these things too, because you know, sometimes you're so focused on the climax, and for men it's like kind of, you know, you're climax and that's it.
Not always,
and as you get
but that
more
can be
skilled,
the tendency if you go into the default. It's climax and pass out.
Yeah, and it's fun to know that your partner is playing with this stretch it like taffy or riding the board all the way in.
And I would say take that then all the way to the post-orgasmic chill for the afterwards. But that's in 2 weeks. That's how to keep the sex dirty after. So we'll get back to that one.
Great. So should we talk
We got one more? No, you want to talk about what is Kitty wanted? Or you want me to?
You can talk about what is Kitty.
Okay. Yeah. So this is another one we picked up from Susan last time. And, you know, her husband, he said, you know, basically, if she's not turned on, then why bother? And that they actually almost divorced because of the quality of their physical relationship. It just wasn't there. And when he took this new attitude of, you know, if my sexual experience is focused on really creating a sexual experience for her, then I'm going to have a great time. But if I go into it thinking of just myself, then it's not going to be good for anybody. So because, and actually we're going to talk about this in the blog a little bit in the other content we're talking about, the lead and listen, in terms of, you know, asking your partner or focusing on your partner for what it is that you you want your partner to experience. Sorry, that's a bit distracting there. Sorry, I was just doing two things at once here. So anyway, he said to her that let's focus on, what does Kitty want? If she's turned on, then everything is working fine. And if she's not turned on, then nothing's working fine. So that's what he starts with. And he says, why bother? If she's not into it, why bother? So just a little reminder there. What does Kitty want? You want to be asking that question as a start.
What the kitty is referring to?
Were you really? No, you were not.
Just trying to make clear. Yeah.
Go ahead. What is the kitty, Raj?
I think it's referring to the pussy.
It is. It is.
Ding,
What
ding,
does Kitty want? And this actually is something that they can say to each other throughout the day, and it lets her know that he really cares about her turn on. And oh, that's the piece I was going to say when I got distracted. The light switch in the boiling pot of water. A man is much easier to turn on and get ready to go. Course, a generalization, and a woman often can take a little bit more, like a boiling pot of water. We'll come back to that, but knowing that it's a good idea to focus first on what does Kitty want, and then a whole new world opens up. Okay, sorry about that. I was a little distracted there.
Great. One thing that we just want to let you guys know is that we've not had our show moderator for the past couple of weeks. And so if you see us looking around or doing some other things, it's because we're doing some of the back end stuff to, show slides on the screen and things of that nature. Okay, so shall we move into our new content that the blog was about this week?
Yes. As you saw, or just a moment ago, I was talking about the boiling pot and the light switch. And we created this little graphic here combining these two images, the red hot light switch. It doesn't take much in the relationship for the guy to get going. But we'll come back to that in just a minute. Let me just back up a little bit, because the context for your relationship is absolutely critical. Before you are going to dive into this, delicious sexual experience, you want to decide what it is that you really want. Like, what is the context for your most intimate interactions with your partner? Maybe right now your sex life is pretty unsatisfying, and maybe it's even just one more thing on this long list of things that you're irked about with your partner. Or you can transform your sex life into it being, this inspiring arena so that you can play and learn and grow together. Because, there's an expression in some personal development work we've done before. They say you can be right or be close. So I ask you, do you want to be right about what's wrong with your sex life? Or do you want to have, the awesome, eye-popping, what Raj and I call best-eva-sexy-time? Is that what you want?
And if you're willing to create that context that you're really after having the sex life that you want, rather than being dissatisfied with how it's going, it really can be a limitless adventure. And if you embrace this beginner's mind, that there's so much room for you to grow, both of you and together, in terms of what your sex life can be. At all levels, physical, emotional, and even spiritual. We don't get too much into the spiritual on this show, but deepening your sexual expression and also your connection with your partner can really deepen your deeper spiritual connection with each other. Yeah,
a sex life is not just stimulating and satisfying, but it can actually be very nourishing and a sacred experience.
So really take that on, that sex can be this limitless adventure. Even if you have what you consider a pretty good sex life, consider that you're just getting started. And if you're currently dissatisfied with your sex life, you can take it on with wide-eyed wonder, like, hey, what can we do? And that really opens it up to positive energy around it, instead of there's something wrong. Very few of us have had any kind of training in the realm of sex, and we're just expected to know how to do it right.
Sex ed in school is more of like what not to do.
And so the cool thing about that is that there's so much to learn. But yeah.
And I was just going to say, there's an expression, might have been even Susan from that episode where she said this. She said, we're beginners learning together. Mm. And it doesn't matter where your sex life is. If you hold that context that we're beginners learning together, then it really does create this space of, as Raj said, this limitless adventure, of pleasure, of peace, and joy. Should I move on? Okay, so what do I mean by we're different? You know, if you've heard any of the shows before, you've heard me mention Harville Hendrix and Helen Hunt and my favorite relationship book, Getting the Love You Want. And so in that book, the very first tip that they talk about is the distinction. It's called differentiation. And it basically means that I'm not you and you're not me. We don't think the same. Like, how could they possibly do that? What were they thinking? We're different. We feel things differently. We process information differently. So if you can understand that your partner, especially, you know, the male-female dynamic, you know, I mentioned the light switch and the boiling pot. If you can get that you're not just different, but you're fundamentally different in this realm, then it can make a huge difference for you.
Yeah, and it also frees you up for, you know, when you think you're doing something wrong, it may be just that you don't understand the other side of things, right? And so that also can be you know, when we talk about it being a limitless adventure, getting to understand the opposite sex, how they work in the realm of sex. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's not just also the gender or the two people, but it's even, especially speaking for myself as a woman, different moment by moment. You know, what was a turn on yesterday may not be a turn on today. So it's really important that you're different and you're always listening, because the moment might be different as well. Sometimes it's hot and you want it. You know, I was watching a program. A woman said, "I don't want a pillow. I want my head to bang against the wall."
What was that show?
Togetherness. And so there's different feelings for different times. Okay.
So let's get to this this light switch and boiling water. I love this.
Well, I've mentioned this a couple of times. You want to say something?
Yeah, you take it out.
Oh, okay. Okay. I get to write the blog, so I get to know this in more detail. So, okay, as I was saying before, you know, it's important that you not only understand what turns your partner on might be different, but that it might be completely, entirely different the way you think about sex. So, as I said before, the man, generally speaking, of course, now I know that this is a stereotype or a generalization, but it does apply to a lot of people. And if it doesn't, that's fine. You know, we're all about trying something on, and if it fits, great. If it doesn't, my favorite line is use and adapt this. So how can you adapt this and turn it around? But in the case of a man, you know, it doesn't take much for it to be game on. And it is like, you know, on or off, interested or not interested usually. And it's all about the body. It's, you know, the touch, physical, and you can be direct. You can go straight for it. Now, again, this isn't all men in all cases, but a generalization. Now, also with the men, they grow up, they are socialized, or maybe there's even biology involved as well, to initiate. And they have an innate sense of permission, as opposed to, you know, a woman who is more like a pot of water. It takes time to boil. It takes consistent heat over time to boil. And the key factor here is it's in her mind. It's not her body, it's her mind. And I'm always amazed, you know, the few times like I've had a dream, like waking up in the middle of an orgasm. I'm like, how is that possible? Well, your brain is actually your strongest sexual organ that you have. So with the man, go straight for it, use the body. With the woman, you might want to take a more roundabout path, a little more indirect, and using her mind. And remember that she's not programmed to initiate. She usually needs permission. You want to give her permission so that she can let go of any thoughts of, oh, I'm supposed to be the good girl, or I'm not supposed to do this, or what's he going to think of me with that? So the initiating can be a little bit more difficult. Now, if you fail to pay attention to these tendencies, and again, they're tendencies, not rules, then you're pretty much guaranteed to end up at some point with either a rude awakening or, in my opinion, worse, the slow death. Because the slow death you often don't see coming, and then one day your relationship is over and you're like, what the hell happened? But if you accept now that you are different and you start to play with those dynamics, then a whole new world of sex becomes not just possible, but absolutely inevitable. A whole new world of wonderful.
I was just thinking about our last session with Brian and Jennifer, 2 sessions ago, I guess it was, as it starts. And they were talking about maintaining a level of sexual tension with each other and getting the woman just on the verge of like not being able to stand, not like just diving in.
What do they call it? Plus one? Plus one.
Yes,
So
plus
you mean
one.
wherever her energy is, you kick it up just a notch. So if she's being tender, you be a little more tender. If she's being intense, you just feel into her energy and take it up just a notch.
Yeah, just plus oneing. And whether that's, you know, getting close to somebody and just maintaining that closeness, you know, or you're touching them in a sexy way, and just keep up wanting, plus wanting, and developing.
The difference between one-upping and plus wanting, very different.
Yeah, and I was just imagining it actually flipping so that the woman's light becomes a light switch. And
we're going to get to that part. We're going to get to that part, actually. All right, you want to go to the next slide here? So this next one is actually for the men mostly. We're going to have a little bit more for the women, but really, again, because as I said, you know, the man is the initiator often, and in society, and I at least know in my life, like I remember there was a while I was like, okay, I'm going to seduce Raj into seducing me because I really wanted to be seduced. Now is very much is there and present, but at those times, and then I thought, wait a second, if I'm seducing him into seducing me, I'm still doing the one doing seducing. And not that I don't ever want to seduce, but just generally, I usually want Raj to initiate, and I try to make it my rule not to say no. We learned that from Adam Galad and his wife Sandy Pants. Emergency sex, when your partner wants to have it, even if you have to run out and go somewhere, take those moments, you know, are not always going to be there. So if you're having that inclination to go for it, make it happen and go for it.
Yeah. Alex Allman in what was that, season 1, episode 4?
Yep.
Talked a lot about this polarity, and
that's a common David Data piece, which a book I highly recommend. The Way of the Superior Man talks a lot about that. And
it's a real art to playing with the polarity, so that both of you aren't pluses at the same time. Pluses repel, and often we think that the man has to be the plus, or you know, the one kind of dominating the sex, and that's not always the case. There's a dance back and forth, and as the man, if you're paying attention and reading the signs, that when the woman is actually wanting to play a more you know, positive or masculine role, for the man to actually accept that and balance the polarity, so it can still be an attraction instead of a repulsion.
And when you say positive, you're meaning a magnetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not positive, negative in the good and bad sense, right? Like that. Okay. Right. Great. Well, in general, in this term, you know, masculine sexual leadership creates surrendered sex. Another great tip. I think that was also Susan. Like, we got a lot from this last one. But there's research. I did a lot of research on all the studies out there on women's fantasies, and very often, you know, a woman, she really wants to be ravaged. Now, there's a difference, you know, between ravaged and taken, and there's a subtle line. So we'll get to that in a second. But the main idea is, with masculine sexual leadership creating surrendered sex, if the man creates a safe space, the woman can surrender. You know, what a woman wants most, and I remember once Raj was on a call with a bunch of guys, and they said, oh, this new report came out, and what the most common phrase a woman wants to hear is, and what did you say it was, Raj?
I've got this.
I've got this, and? I've got you.
I've got you.
I've got you. Yeah, I've got this, I've got you. And so that's what a woman wants to hear is, I've got you. Because, you know, in today's world, many of us, when we feel like we have to manage it all, we're working, we're taking care of relationships, we're still trying to be sexy and beautiful. And, you know, we often just want to surrender and be taken and scooped up, or as I said, ravaged. And this term of, you know, masculine sexual leadership creating surrendered sex, if you can really step into this space of leading, a woman usually wants to follow. She's waiting for you to give her permission. She's waiting for you to take control so that she can surrender. But again, remember, she has to feel safe. So take baby steps so that as you're feeling in, you're leading with your dominant energy, you're directing, but then you're listening, you're pausing. How does her body react? Is she kind of recoiling, even like a little bit subtly, or does she relax and soften and like open? You know, what are her sounds telling you? You know, are they saying that she wants more? You know, and when you look at her, taking her to her edge, is she ecstatically on her edge, or is she pushed so far past it that she's now in full-blown anxiety? So the tip is here is to insert your directive energy and then observe. So that's why we call this lead and listen.
Yeah, and for the guys out there, sometimes it can be challenging when your partner expresses either sounds or emotions that indicate that they're actually not happy with what you're doing sexually. And yeah, totally. And that can totally kill the sexual energy between you in a moment if you respond to that in a negative way. What I've been learning to do is develop the capacity to be with anything that your partner expresses and just keep flowing with it. It's almost like an athletic endeavor. If you make a mistake, you get right back in there and you adjust.
Or it kind of makes me think of Murray's piano playing, that, you know, we have a friend that does this improvisational piano playing, that when he plays a note that wasn't quite what he was expecting, he kind of takes that as part of the song and goes with it. So roll with it, you're saying, huh?
Yeah, roll with it.
Lean and listen. And is that the dynamic that was that night after the call with Alex? Was that what he was talking about? Or
I guess just say a little bit about this.
Okay, yeah, because it was great.
There are so many moments when you're making love with your partner that some small thing can totally trigger you or your partner, and then it's like over. And you have to be like a ninja to navigate all these little minefields. You can almost imagine it in your head, like, duck that one, you know, and just to dance with all these little potential triggers with your focus on that you can satisfy your partner the way that they want to be satisfied. And these are all little cues that you want to dance with. And just if you do feel triggered during, just contain your energy around that and take it as a cue of like, what can I do better? You know, it's like many even better ifs during the sex.
Yeah. And one last point about here on this slide, forceful and loving. And I just wanted to address, you know, because this word ravaged, you know, when I even looked up the definition, you know, it's more like, you know, a destruction. You know, it's the modern term is kind of taking on a new dimension, but it really didn't sound very positive. But again, this is the most common word when a woman is asked about her fantasies, the top 5 fantasies. This is always in the top 5 in all the research, not for every woman, of course, but in general terms, it's in the top 5 as being ravaged. So I just want to be clear that ravaged does not mean rape. We know the difference. People want to be forceful but loving, leading but listening. There is no love, there is no listening in rape or you know, there is no partnership there. So ravaged is about a really, really deep partnership. It's about a resonance and a listening and a trust that gets built so that your partner can lead and you can surrender because it feels safe. Okay, so it looks like, are you making it live? I do have a little bit more content. Can I finish this up?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll keep going. You'll go back to the next slide afterwards, though?
I'll go now.
You'll go now. Okay. All right. So now we want to switch it and talk about the women here because it does take two to tango, right? So when a man wants to take a woman, you know, he can't ravage her if she's resisting, right? That actually is what we were talking about. That's forced, that's rape, right? That's not what we're talking about. So, and when I talk about surrender with the ladies, I'm not saying uncle. It's not like, fine, I'll have sex with you. That's not what we're talking about. You know, consent is not just necessary, it's hot and people want it. So, and you need the next slide, actually. One there. We'll just get that changed for you guys. There we go. Our tango shot. Yes. Okay.
Love this image, by the way. It's really descriptive of the interplay between the man and the woman.
So as I was saying, you don't want just consent, and you don't want, you know, they don't want you to submit just to get you off their back. You know, they want to be wanted. You know, men want to be desired. They want to be turned on. They want you to be turned on for them. So as I said, it takes two to tango. So what is the woman's role in all of this? Raj has mentioned the polarity. And so if there is no surrender, then there is no opportunity to have that ravaged. Because if you think about it, if someone's pushing towards you and you're pulling away, there's no tension. And if you're both pushing towards each other, in that first way, it's like a noodle, right? And if you're both pushing towards each other, then it's a power struggle. So you don't want a power struggle and you don't want a noodle nothingness, right? So you want to be feeling that tension between the two of you. And this is the good kind of tension, not the bad kind of tension. So if you can both surrender and let go at the same time, then there's no tension or charge going to be happening. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I put here in my notes here. So while we're encouraging the men to take, we want the men to take some bold baby steps. We want you to be bold and courageous, but take baby steps and feel into it. Then with the woman, when your man is being directive, see where you can surrender. So I'm a pretty task-oriented, some might even say masculine personality, and I can be quite directive all day long in my life. And I've had to practice and work at softening and relaxing. And in fact, the first year I was with Raj, people kept saying to Raj, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it. And other people would say to me, you're just so much softer. You're so much softer. But it really has taken practice that when Raj has been directive, instead of me going, no, I like to go this way, saying, how can I surrender? Even if it's just a little bit, we talked about the +1, do it with your partner the other way. If they're being directive, then let go just a little bit and see where they're taking you. And then when it becomes more neutral, then you can go ahead and insert. Now, of course, if something is really not comfortable and you don't want to do, we're not saying you should do anything that you don't want to do. What we're saying is stretch your comfort zones. Someone says, I'm out of my comfort zone. I once had someone say to me, stretch your damn comfort zone. It's worth it. Not easy. Wonderful is worth it. It's actually Van Jones, but.
Yeah, the image that came to me as you were talking about that is almost like throwing a ball back and forth. When you have the ball, then the other person doesn't have the ball, and you're taking the lead, and vice versa. And we have it that the man always has to be leading, and that it gets uncomfortable when the woman is leading. It's only uncomfortable when the woman's leading if the man is also trying to lead at the same time, and that creates that tension instead of attraction that Gaby's talking about.
And if for some reason you've got some weak area in your relationship with trust, maybe they've pushed too far sexually before and you had a strong reaction, or it's kind of crazy, but us women, like literally, if you don't do what you said you were going to do with something as small as taking out the trash, it actually impacts your trust level in your sex life. It was a few episodes ago I shared that I outed myself that, Raj so generously does most of the dishes. I do the shopping and the cooking. He does most all the dishes, but sometimes they're not as clean as I would like them to be. So I say to Raj, you're going to kill the baby. Now, mind you, we don't even have kids. We're trying to have a baby, but we don't even have kids. And so what I make it mean when I see a dirty dish is that he's going to not wash the baby bottle properly. The baby's going to get sick and the baby's going to die. My point is that we kind of make these kind of crazy leaps sometimes. So men, be looking for where you can build trust. Don't say you're going to do something if you're not going to do it. Do it if you say you're going to do it, and clean it up if you don't do it when you said you're going to do it. But ladies, on the other side, on the flip side, you also want to allow yourself to surrender and relax and stretch your trust. So if there's some weak areas, sit down together, talk about them. This is kind of getting into the after period, but don't just step over those, because it will show up in your sex life and other places as well.
It also illustrates the connection between the fights clean and the sex dirty, and it's why we also do both. Is that you can't really have a sexy health life, passionate sexy health life, healthy sex life if
a sexy health life is good too. Hey,
yeah, why not? If you're fighting and there's all this tension between you,
the bad tension. We want the good tension, not the bad tension.
And it takes work to make sure the other parts of your life are working, and that you have the ability and tools to navigate the different challenges you face in your relationship so that you are attracted to each other.
And I did want to just point out, if there are any trust issues or some difficult conversations to have, just a couple of weeks ago, we did a blog on the Imago dialogue, which I think is the best communication tool out there, because you don't actually try to resolve something. It's all about just being heard. And it is amazing what happens when you just listen to your partner. So if there's any trust issues there, go back and look at that article. The actual title is How to Pull Your Argument Escape Hatch. So this communication model can be used to end an argument, but really it can be used to talk about anything.
Anything, yeah. Great. Should we get to the action option? And also, if you are viewing the show right now,
I have one more piece.
Let's let people jump on too.
Okay.
So if you're viewing the show and you want to
Let me just wrap it up and then, okay, because this is just the last tidbit, and then we'll be closed and we can go into questions.
Okay.
All right. You see, I told you I'm a little directive. Wait, I should practice surrendering. Never mind. I just thought we'd close this chapter.
I was just giving people the opportunity to get that going, because it can take a few minutes sometimes to get that sorted out. Yeah? Okay. So refresh your browser, because we made the link live. And when you're ready, if you want to jump on, you can click the join the Hangout button beneath the video player.
And you can either let us know in the comments that you have a question and either ask the question in the comments, or let us know that you want to ask the question live, and we'll go ahead and turn your video on so that you can do that.
Great.
But the last piece, can you go back one slide for me? The last piece that I wanted to share with you is called Flip It Good. And you don't want to get stuck in a rut. You know, we want you to play passion, I call it. You know, we're in the season of peace, and so we've been talking about playing peace. And all of this work is about playing. So in this case, we're playing passion. So don't get stuck in a particular rut. You don't want to be a one-trick pony. Variety is the spice of life. So, you know, what I've been talking about is a general dynamic that if you follow, you really can't go wrong. But if you do that all the time, then even that's going to get boring. Again, variety is the spice of life. We've heard it all before. So ladies, turn the tables once in a while. Initiate, you know, and I don't mean just initiate to get things going, but initiate when you're in the heat of it. And not just the heat of it, but like trying new things and being bold. And, you know, I call it initiating new ideas for intimate interactions, your most intimate interactions. So get creative about it. So get adventurous, get assertive. You might even use some role play, maybe take on another character that's exciting to you. And men, you might try on what surrender feels like. So let your woman lead you for a bit and see where her desires take you. And again, just reminding you, you might need to give her permission for that.
Now, did you get that Flip It Good from the song? Flip It Good.
No, I didn't, but you can move it. Flip it good. Yes. Yes. Switch it up. Switch it up.
Often we create distinctions with fun names to them, and I thought for sure that who sings that song?
I don't know. I don't know.
Flip It Good.
Oh, Devo.
Devo.
Devo. Yes. I can't believe that came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing to wrap up here is, if you've watched any of our shows or read any of our blogs, you'll know that we don't just want to give you good information. We really want you to take action. A little intention, attention, and action goes a long way. It can make a huge difference in your relationship. But if you just have an idea, an aha moment, you're like, oh, that sounds great. If you don't do something about it and put it in action, and preferably right away, then most likely, you know, by the time you get up from your computer, that's going to be a long faded memory, and nothing's going to change. And you'll end up, you know, frustrated, or, you know, in my opinion, worse, you know, living parallel lives and saying, oh, it's fine. You know, I often say, fine as effed. I could say it on the show, right? Fine as fucked. It is. If you say your relationship's fine, that should be a huge red flag. So here's a couple of action options. You know, men, we're inviting you the next time that you're intimate, be directive until your partner gives you a direction, either verbally or non-verbally. And when she's being directed, stop. So we talked about that. So don't be the noodle. When she's neutral, don't be neutral. And when she's directive, don't be directive. Okay? And women, the next time you're with your beloved, invite yourself to soften and surrender. And really be authentic about what feels good and what doesn't. But whenever possible, just let go and relax and let your man lead you and see where it goes.
And our third action option step here is to have a conversation with your partner about what would build trust between you in your sexual relationship. And if there's anything that's gotten in the way of building that trust that you might want to resolve to restore that trust. And as we mentioned earlier, the Imago dialogue is an awesome way to have conversations around things that are getting in the way of having trust in your relationship.
So we've given you today about 5 or 6. Oh, sorry, did I not do the last one?
You didn't do the last one.
Okay, you want to do that one?
Sure. So finally, mix it up.
Flip it good.
Yeah, mix it up. Yeah. There's so much room here for you to play with who's leading, developing the ability to follow, and to then flip it back to leading in a single sexual encounter. And if you're usually the more surrendered one, then test out being in the driver's seat once in a while.
Yeah. And again, while I've said male and female, this really could just be more the masculine and the feminine. Maybe it's totally the reverse for you. I definitely know couples where it's the woman who wants more sex and is trying to initiate and her partner isn't interested. So we don't want to pigeonhole anyone in any one direction. Just take that generalization and use and adapt it as it applies best to you.
Great. So if any of the viewers out there have any questions, feel free to post those in the comment window underneath where you're watching the video. And also, if anyone would like to jump on live, just hit the join the hangout button. And again, refresh your browser window to make sure that link is live. If you're having any problems with that link, just shoot us a comment in the comment window so that we know that that's happening and we can troubleshoot the problem. So while we're waiting for that, let's look at what's next.
Yes, well, I mean, just to do a little review, because I like to tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Mm-hmm. Repetition is not on accident here, not on accident. And so we actually talked about 4 or 5 different distinctions here that we put on the slides, but there were several others that kind of popped and worked their way in. So just to go through those again, making sure the towards versus away. So saying what you want, not what you don't want, being positive and forward versus recoiling and pulling away. Now, of course, then there's the complete opposite, the flip side, having your feisty feedback. Go ahead and just say it exactly like it is in the moment. Make sure that you've created that agreement, though, with your partner so they're not taken aback when you're giving them some unsolicited feedback. Stretching your orgasms like taffy, right? Riding that wave as long as you possibly can. And, she was talking about having orgasms the last 30 minutes or even all day long. I've heard about this. I know this is why I say it doesn't matter where you are in your sex life. There's always a new place to go because, I'm pretty impressed, with the minute long seems like a long time, but, going 30 minutes, my goodness. So, but just knowing you can stretch your orgasms really, like I said, has already doubled the length in our experience. What do you got there, Raj?
I was just going to quickly show our audience Susan Bratton's.
No, that's not Susan's. No, that's a different one. No.
Oh.
No, but I will tell you. But I will tell you about hers because the other one that Susan has is fantastic. Is called. It's from her company, Personal Life Media, and it's called Steamy Sex Ed. That's what it is. Steamy Sex Ed. We'll put a link in the comments there for you. But it's kind of like sex ed meets pornography. It's done by a wonderful woman. Jaya is the person leading, and there's about 3 or 4 different couples, and each instruction shows the camera going in and out on these different couples, and it's well done. I mean, it's not perfect. I definitely sent her my feedback, but there's so much weird stuff out there that, pornography is like not educational, and, for often where I go is like, what's the life story of that person on the other end? And do they really want to be doing that? There is some good stuff out there, but this is really intentional. These, the people that are doing it, it's very clean, very clear. It's sexy. The sets look beautiful. They have one that's kind of this like Indian scene and set, and they have one that's all like black setting and candles. It's kind of like a 50 Shades of Grey feel. Not that I read the book or the movie, but saw the movie, but those pieces that are out there. And another one where there's like blue and purple chiffon floating through. So there's lots of different vibes and feelings, and they do a really pretty good job. So we definitely give that one a thumbs up. Even the one that's just on massage, about 15 minutes into it, we kind of left script, and that was one of our best evers, wasn't it?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and enter the name of that series in the comment window?
Okay.
And one of the great things about that video series is it expands your range of technique. Again, we've had so little education in sex and how to please our partner. and then we're just expected to know how to do it, and we get stuck in these ruts because we actually don't have a breadth of knowledge on the different techniques. One of the great things about watching these video series is you can then improvise and pull all these different things that you've learned through the series to fit the moment with your partner. So it's a lot of fun to watch these things, Gaby. As Gaby mentioned, they're really well done, really tastefully done. Okay, so let's have a look at what's upcoming. And
yeah, as we said, we go eight episodes every season. And so there's 24 episodes a year. We've got the season of play, the season of peace, and the season of passion. And each one of those will alternate 8 episodes with Fights Clean, Sex Dirty, before, as it starts, during, and after. And you still, we said we were going to pull it at the end of October, but we haven't yet. So you can still get all of season 1, if you want to see those past videos, and of course season 2. But by Christmas, they'll all be gone. Well, they'll be gone for free. You'll be able to buy them as a series. So go ahead and check those out now.
Great. So next week we're going to be talking about how to keep the fights clean after, and some of the what are some of our key tips here? I'm drawing a blank.
On which one?
Fights clean after. Fights
clean after. Well, you want to be able to turn your breakdowns into breakthroughs.
You want to make those fights worth it.
And upsets into intimacy is what I like to call it. I like my alliterations, making it fun, because who says relationship work should be so serious and significant? Well, a lot of people do. That's the problem. I think we should be having a lot more fun here. Yeah, but after a fight, what can you do so that you actually really take that argument, and we like to retire them. So one of the things we do, we name our arguments, we play games about our arguments, we turn our friction factors, we translate those into peace practices and make promises about peace practices. So we'll be going into a bunch of that.
Yeah, all these things that cause friction between you and your partner, they're just sort of lamp posts to what you actually need to work on with your partner. Either that you could use some personal development, or your partner could use some personal development in. And if you really treat the things that are causing friction between you and your partner as these guideposts to having your relationship better, instead of thinking, oh, we shouldn't have that problem, what's wrong with us? Yeah, it makes all the difference in your relationship. In
fact, this one is back to sex. I know you're moved on to fights here, but I was reading an article this week that was talking about how often people have sex, and the largest study on almost 100,000 people. And I just thought it was really interesting, people comparing themselves to the norm, because really it's what you want, it's how much does it feel good for you to be having sex. I think if I get the numbers somewhere correctly, there was about 7% of the population was having sex every day. There was about 50% of the population that was having sex 2 or 3 times a week. And there was, I think, about 17% that rarely had sex or almost never. That's a lot of people never having sex. And, again, it's what works for you. For some people, it may actually work to have a celibate relationship or to rarely have sex. But for most couples, missing out on that is just one more level of separation. And that's the problem with relationships. They usually don't end in a split second. Every now and then something big happens like that. But it's usually a slow pull to the default. And one day you feel like strangers and you're like, why are we doing this at all? And gosh, I don't even like you. The crankiness builds up. But having that intimacy, not just because of the intimate moment, but even the skin-to-skin contact. In fact, Raj and I, when we read a bunch about skin-to-skin contact, we don't wear pajamas anymore because it's so healing. That research shows from all sorts, parents holding their children when they're sick, but skin-to-skin contact can be very, very healing. And I certainly know when I snuggle up with you at night, I love it. It's much better. Forget the pajamas.
Yeah, and you really can have it the way you want it. We often give up. It's like, oh, our sex life is not the way we want it to be. Just use the complaint as access to inform what you want, and then get into action around it. We're instigating some screen-free evenings where we have just time to connect, and we don't turn the screens on after whether computer or TV. And one of those is tonight. Super excited for that.
Yeah, when the computer screen closes from this, then we're done for the night. Well, we're done with the screens anyways.
So let's just talk about a few of the treats that we have possible for you. So first of all, we have our free guide. This free guide is an overview of the top tips and tools that are covered in our full ebook. It's really beautifully done, and you'll get a ton of value out of this. It covers a lot of the topics that we talk about on the show. And
it's a quick read. It's a great way to like skim over it and actually get a whole, I think there's at least 2 tips for each of these categories of fights, clean, sex, dirty, before, as it starts, during, and after. So a really great overview, and it's laid out in such a way that it's really easy to see.
Could you type that URL in the comments?
Sure thing.
So that's first. That's our free guide.
And I haven't found the right link for Steamy Sex Ed, but I will get that in there just once the show's done here.
Great. We also then have our ebook, which goes into greater detail about a lot of the different topics that we're talking about, both the fights clean and the sex dirty. We call it How to Keep the Fights Clean, the 5 simple steps to keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty, solutions that really satisfy.
Really satisfy. And that's because in the book we go through having you look at actually what are the unsatisfactory quote unquote solutions, you know, the things that we do by default as a strategy for coping, but they're really not solutions at all. And then we actually look at what really are some satisfying solutions. And then we even talk about how to make those habits so that it's not just a good idea, but it's actually something that lives on.
So, you know, if you're really struggling in certain areas of your relationship, this ebook is without doubt going to help you solve many of those problems. Part of the problem with our relationships and the issues that we experience with them is that we don't have any tools to fix them, and then we get frustrated with that. This ebook covers some really cool and fun tips and tools, both in the fights clean and the sex dirty, everything from the good and right, bad and wrong dance to the post-orgasmic chill. And every distinction and tool has an action option with it so that you can actually get into action on making those things the way that you would like them to be.
Okay, now this one is my favorite because anyone who asks this says, how is your relationship work different? The way it's different is that 1, we're playful, and 2, we're proactive. Almost any relationship work you look at out there is going to focus on the problems. They focus on what I call problem pathologizing. And I actually have to give credit. I don't know who to give credit to, but I read that somewhere. I didn't come up with that alliteration myself. But it's so true. Most of the work, you dissect the problems and you actually aren't creating what it is that you want to move towards. So this program, this 17-week, you can do it in 12 weeks, but this 12 to 17-week program for a couple is really about getting proactive about your relationship. So you get to create a vision for your relationship, and you get it down into 4 or 5 sentences that you literally can have memorized. And you can check in with that statement and see, are we in alignment with that or not? And then once you have that shared relationship vision, I ask both of you, what are the 3 most important things that are most difficult for you in the relationship? And you choose the challenge, not your partner choosing the challenge for you. And then we spend those 12 weeks looking at how to move those 6 things forward and what's getting in the way. So we do look at what the challenges are, but only in the context that they get in the way of what you really want, not having them be the focus. Because I remember when Raj and I, we spent about a year going to therapy, and sometimes we'd leave therapy more mad than when we got there. So in this program, you know, it's great to get started with the ebook or the free guide. And we're even going to have a group program coming up in February, I believe, January or February. But in this case, if you want some personalized, focused attention, if you want to just nip the negativity and the nagging in the bud, and when I say the negativity, that is the #1 thing killing your relationship. Any of the issues you think you have, it's the low-grade, day-to-day, or even high-grade negativity that you've got coming at you. And we've got some really great tips like the drama-free diet and some other practices to completely eliminate that. And then, as I mentioned, you create a shared relationship vision, so you have this thing to move towards. Do you want to tell them should we tell them our shared relationship vision?
Sure.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
I love my marriage and my husband.
And my wife.
We are playful, peaceful, and passionate. We are hot for each other and express it daily. We generate with, we generate with intention. We communicate with care. We seek to understand, spot, meet each other's needs and delights. We contribute to the world,
and we're on top
of what is to be done, and abundant with our finances, time, energy, and love. So when we say that to each other most days, not every day, but we can look and go, is there anywhere that that's not feeling true? And then we know that's where you work on your relationship. So you're not waiting for someone else, you're not waiting for the problem to rear its head and then you deal with that, until you're snapping at each other over nothing, but you're actually checking in daily. Are we being the couple we want to be? So we do this in 12 weeks in some 60-minute video calls, and we have all sorts of add-ons and tips and gifts for you in this program. It is with me. It's direct. It's not with a group. And we do this in our 12-weekly, it says 60 minutes, but they're usually actually 90 minutes. Can be done in 60 minutes if you want, but sometimes we get a little bit into it. So I do hold a full hour and a half for you once a week for 12 weeks. I have one spot in that program, by the way, and you can go to relationshipfunandgames.com/relationship-coaching, and I'll put that in the website, in the comments for the show as well.
So that brings us to a close for episode 6, How to Keep the Sex Dirty During. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you're watching this on replay, we hope that you get a lot out of the show.
Yeah, and do let us know your questions. We're always updating our content and doing it based on what you tell us is going on. So whether it's in the comments here or sending us an email, we're doing this because we love love, because our relationship sucked when it started. So much so that at our engagement party, people said, well, not people, one person, a good friend called us aside, and I thought we were going to get a present and a gift. And he said, I don't think you guys should do this. And now that same person is like, you need to be doing this show. You need to be helping other couples. We really, really want couples to be able to do what we did, which is go from a relationship that our loved ones, I mean, literally the day of the wedding, there were still people going, are you sure? But we were sure, but we got committed to it being great, and we're 10 years into it, and every week it's getting better. And no, it doesn't mean there aren't some bad weeks. We had a tough time about a month ago, but it is always, always getting better, and we want you to have that as well. Wonderful is worth it. So thanks for being here. It says something great about you and about your relationship.
We'll see you next week, same time, same Relationship Fun and Games channel.
FightsCleanSexDirty.com.
5:30 Pacific time next Wednesday. Hope to see you there.
Bye.